My own son tried to kill me, and I only survived because of a secret my husband just confessed. What I discovered about my family will haunt you forever. My name is Hilda Moore. I'm 60 years old. And if you think you know what family betrayal looks like, I promise you don't. 3 days ago, my own son stood behind me on a mountain trail, placed his hands on my back, pushed. But that wasn't the moment that broke me. The moment that broke me was when my husband whispered, while we lay shattered at the bottom of a cliff, "Hilda, don't marvel. Pretend you're dead." Because only then did I realize something far worse than the fall itself. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. For 40 years, I believed I had built a good life. A quiet one. A safi one. My husband, Henry, and I lived in a modest, suburban home where mornings smelled like coffee and fresh bread. I taught 2nd grade at the local elementary school, and Henry ran a small woodworking shop behind the house. He made tables, cabinets, rocking chairs, pieces people passed down through generations. We had 2 sons. Ethan, our firstborn, was warm and protective. He laughed easily, helped his father in the workshop, and always checked on me when I came home tired. Caleb, 5 years younger, was quieter, watchful, sensitive. I told myself, different but loved just the same. Or so I believed. Every Sunday after church, we sat around a dining table Henry had built himself. Ethan talked about his plans for the future. Caleb mostly stayed silent, staring at his plate. I used to worry about him, thinking he felt overshadowed. I had no idea what he was actually thinking. 25 years ago, everything changed. Ethan was 20 years old when he didn't come home one October night. We waited. Midnight passed. Then 1 a.m. then dawn. They found him at the bottom of a river gorge. The police ruled it an accident. I accepted that explanation because the alternative was unbearable. Caleb stood beside me at the funeral, calm and dry-eyed, while my world collapsed. Henry held me so tightly I could barely breathe. I thought my family had suffered the worst pain imaginable. I was wrong. After Ethan's death, Caleb transformed. He became attentive, gentle, helpful. He fixed things around the house, sat with me when I cried, told me he'd take care of us when we got older. I thought grief had matured him. What it actually did was teach him how to hide. Years passed. Caleb married a woman named Laura Charming, soft-spoken, always smiling. They had 2 children, grandchildren who called me Nana and climbed onto Henry's lap like kittens. For a while, I believed life had given us mercy. Then 6 months ago, Caleb suggested we update our will. "You're not young anymore," he said kindly. "We just want to protect you." Something in his voice made my stomach tighten, but Henry agreed. We trusted our only living son. That trust would almost cost us our lives. Because, as we lay broken at the bottom of that cliff, Henry finally told me the truth he had buried for 25 years. The truth about Ethan's death. And the truth about the monster we raised. But what Henry confessed next made me realize our son didn't just kill once. And he never planned to stop. The wind cut through my bones as I lay twisted among rocks and broken branches. My body screamed with pain, but I didn't move. I didn't cry out. I didn't even breathe deeply. Because Henry had whispered the words that froze my blood. "Pretend you're dead." Above us, Footsteps crunched on gravel, slow, careful, unhurried. Our son wasn't panicking. He was checking his work. When the footsteps faded, Henry's fingers trembled against mine. His voice was barely a breath. "Hilda, I should have told you this years ago." I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers. But fear pinned me to the ground, stronger than pain ever could. "The night Ethan died," Henry whispered, "he didn't fall." My heart slammed so hard I thought it might give me away. Henry swallowed, each word cutting deeper than the last. "Ethan came to the workshop late that evening. He said he'd found something he couldn't ignore anymore." And he paused. His breathing grew uneven. "He told me Caleb had been stealing from us. Small amounts at first, then larger. From the business account, from the savings we'd set aside for you." I felt a wave of nausea. He said, when he confronted Caleb, "Your younger son didn't deny it." He smiled, told Ethan he was only taking what would eventually be his anyway. The image of my quiet, soft-spoken boy twisted into something unrecognizable. "Ethan threatened to tell you," Henry continued. "He said he wouldn't let his brother destroy our family." Henry's grip tightened. That's when Caleb lost control. My ears rang. "They argued by the river gorge," Henry whispered. Ethan called me from his phone. He was shaking. Said he needed help. Said Caleb was following him. Henry's voice cracked for the first time. I got there too late. Tears slid silently into my hairline. I saw Caleb standing at the edge. Ethan was down below, barely alive. I shouted. Caleb turned and said, "Dad," he slipped. Henry inhaled sharply, and I believed him. Or maybe I needed to. The police arrived soon after. Caleb cried, shook, played the grieving brother perfectly. And I stayed quiet, Henry said, because I was afraid. Afraid of losing another son. Afraid of what the truth would do to you. The confession crushed me more than the fall. For 25 years, I had hugged a murderer. I had trusted him with my home, with my grandchildren. Above us, a rock shifted. Footsteps again. Caleb's voice floated down, calm and cold. "Mon, Dad?" My chest tightened. I wanted to answer, to beg. Henry pressed, his fingers into my wrist a warning. Caleb sighed. Must have slid farther than I thought. A pause. Then laughter. Soft, satisfied. He always was dramatic, Caleb muttered. Both of them. My blood ran ice cold. A shadow passed over the edge. Something small tumbled down Caleb's phone. He wasn't calling for help. He was filming. "We need proof," Henry whispered urgently. "If we survive this, we need proof." Caleb's voice echoed again. "I'll tell the police it was fog." Poor footing, tragic. I felt a warm trickle down my temple. The world blurred. As darkness crept in, one thought burned brighter than pain or fear. My son wasn't afraid of killing. He was practiced. But the next thing Caleb said on that mountain made me realize he wasn't there just to kill us. He was there to erase us. The first sound that came through the darkness was my own heartbeat slow, loud, relentless. Then came Caleb's voice. "It's done," he said casually, as if he'd just finished locking a door. "They won't be a problem anymore." Henry's fingers tightened around mine. I felt him shift slightly, careful not to move the rocks beneath us. Caleb paced above, boots scraping. Funny how life works, he continued, talking to himself. All these years, playing the good son. And in the end, it's still not enough. There was a pause. A lighter flicked. I carried this family, he muttered. I deserved more. That's when Henry's other hand slid slowly into his coat pocket. The recorder. Years ago, Henry had bought it to document business meetings. He'd forgotten it was there until now. The red light blinked faintly, hidden by the fabric. Caleb had no idea. I watched Ethan die, Caleb said suddenly, his voice sharp with memory. He begged, promised not to tell. But once someone sees the real you, they're already dangerous. My stomach turned. I pushed him. Caleb went on. Not hard, just enough. Gravity did the rest. I bit my lip, so hard I tasted blood. And tonight, chuckled, tonight is mercy. They're old, cold. The mountain will finish what I started. Henry's breathing shook, but he kept the recorder steady. Caleb stopped pacing. You know what really annoys me? Sighed. Dad pretending he didn't know. Mom pretending she didn't see the signs. All that silence. His footsteps moved closer to the edge. For 25 years, I waited. Waited for the business to be mine. For the house. For the accounts. And now I don't have to wait anymore. I felt Henry's fingers trace a message into my palm. Tal Ivy. A sudden vibration echoed. Caleb cursed under his breath. His phone he'd dropped it earlier, but this sound was different. A second device. His watch. He glanced at it and scowled. Already? Damn it. He turned away from the edge. I'll come back with help in the morning, he muttered. Play the grieving son again. Just like always. Footsteps retreated. Silence swallowed the mountain. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Henry slowly pulled the recorder free. The red light was still on. We have him, he whispered. I wanted to believe that. But then Henry's hand started shaking. What's wrong? I asked. He swallowed hard. Battery's low. My hope wavered. We need to get out, I said. Now. Pain flared as I tried to move. My legs screamed in protest, useless beneath me. I can't walk, I whispered. Henry looked at me, eyes wet but determined. Then I'll drag you. Before we could move, a beam of light sliced through the darkness. Caleb's voice returned too close. I almost forgot. He's come. I never checked the bottom. The flashlight beam crept toward us. My heart nearly stopped. Henry clicked the recorder off and shoved it deep into his coat. Caleb laughed softly. Mom always said I was thorough. The light froze right on Henry's face. Well, Caleb said quietly, look who's still breathing. But what Caleb didn't realize was that one single sentence he spoke. Next would seal his fate forever. Caleb didn't shout. That was the most frightening part. He simply stood there at the edge of the gorge, flashlight steady, eyes flat. No anger, no panic. Just calculation. Well, he said softly, this complicates things. The beam lingered on Henry's face, then slid to me. I saw something flicker in Caleb's eyes, not fear, but irritation. Like we were a problem he thought he'd already solved. You always were stubborn, Mom, he said. Even now. Henry shifted in front of me, without thinking, shielding me with his body. You don't have to do this, Henry said, voice shaking but firm. It's already gone too far. Caleb laughed once, short and humorless. Too far was 25 years ago. He stepped closer, boots crunching. You chose silence. You boasted. And silence has consequences. My mind raced. The recorder. The low battery. Time slipping through our fingers. You killed your brother, I said, forcing the words out. And now you're trying to kill us. Caleb tilted his head. No, Mom, I'm cleaning up a mess. Henry took a breath. Caleb. The recorder is still running. For the first time that night, Caleb froze. The mountain seemed to hold its breath. What recorder? He asked calmly. Henry lifted his coat just enough for the red light to glow faintly through the fabric. Caleb's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Henry met his gaze. You confessed everything. Silence stretched. Then Caleb smiled. You always did overestimate yourself, Dad, he said. Do you really think a recording saves you? He took another step closer. Who do you think they'll believe? A successful businessman? Or to old people who fell off a mountain? My stomach sank. Visit my channel to listen Part 2. Caleb crouched down so his face was level with ours. I already rewrote the will, he said casually. I'm the sole beneficiary. The business. The house. Everything. Henry sucked in a breath. That's impossible. Caleb shrugged. You signed the papers last winter. Remember, you trusted me. I did remember. Henry had been sick, weak. Caleb had brought documents from the bank. The realization hit like a punch. But here's where you made your mistake, Caleb continued, his voice low. You told me about the recorder. He reached into his pocket. My heart slammed. Caleb pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. I called voicemail while you were talking, he said. Every word you recorded I recorded too. Henry's face drained of color. I have Schwell, Caleb went on. You admitting you knew about Ethan, that you covered it up. My world tilted. If I go down, Caleb said softly, you come with me. The flashlight beam swung toward the drop. Now, Caleb said, standing, we finish this. Henry suddenly moved. With a strength I didn't know he had left. He grabbed Caleb's wrist and shoved the flashlight aside. The beam skidded across rocks, plunging us into near darkness. Caleb stumbled back, swearing. And in that chaos, Henry shouted the one sentence Caleb never expected. The recording already uploaded. Caleb froze again. What? He hissed. Henry's voice was steady now. Cloud storage, auto-sync. Caleb's confidence cracked. Just for a second. That second was everything. But before Henry could explain, a sound behind us proved that someone else had heard everything. The sound wasn't loud. That's what made it terrifying. A slow, deliberate crunch of boots on gravel coming from behind us. Caleb turned sharply, his flashlight jerking toward the noise. Who's there? Snapped. A voice answered from the darkness, calm and unfamiliar. Mountain Patrol. My knees nearly gave out in relief. A tall figure stepped into the faint moonlight, wearing a ranger's jacket and carrying a radio. His gaze moved from Caleb to Henry, then to me lying injured on the rocks. "What's going on here?" the ranger asked. Caleb recovered instantly. "Thank God you're here," he said, slipping smoothly into panic. "My parents fell. I was trying to find help." The ranger didn't respond right away. Instead, he crouched beside me, his eyes sharp. "Ma'am, can you speak?" "Yes," I whispered. He pushed us. Caleb laughed nervously. "She's confused." She hit her head. Henry spoke before Caleb could interrupt. "My son murdered his brother 25 years ago." The words hung in the air. The ranger straightened slowly. His hand moved to his radio. "Sir," he said to Caleb, "I'm going to need you to step back." Caleb's jaw tightened. "You have no proof." Henry lifted his chin. "The confession is recorded." Caleb's eyes flicked to the ranger. "And so is theirs," he said. "They're not innocent." The ranger studied us all. "Everyone stay where they are." He turned to Henry. "Sir, do you have the recording?" And he nodded. "It uploaded automatically." Caleb's voice dropped. "You're lying." The ranger raised his radio. "Dispatch, I need backup at Ridge Point. Possible attempted homicide. 2 injured." Caleb exploded. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Shouted. "I own half the land around here. I fund your department." The ranger didn't flinch. "Step away from them, now." Caleb backed up, slowly, but his eyes never left Henry. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You think one recording erases a lifetime?" As the ranger helped Henry lift me onto a thermal blanket, Caleb took another step back. Then another. And then he ran. "Stop," the ranger shouted, chasing after him. The flashlight beam vanished into the trees. I lay there shaking, the pain finally catching up to me as the adrenaline faded. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Henry squeezed my hand. "We're alive," he whispered. But I knew better. Survival was only the beginning. At the hospital, the truth unraveled quickly. The recording had uploaded only partially. Battery failure had cut it short. Caleb's confession about Ethan was there. But Henry's admission was there too. Cover-up, silence, guilt. The police returned the next morning with news. Caleb had disappeared. His accounts were emptied. The will had been altered legally. And then came the final blow. Henry was arrested. "Accessory after the fact," the officer said gently. I watched them lead my husband away, tears blurring my vision. Caleb had lost control of the mountain. But he'd won something far worse. He'd shattered our family forever. And just when I thought nothing could hurt more, Caleb sent a message from an unknown number that made my blood run cold. The message arrived at 3:17 a.m. My phone buzzed softly on the hospital tray table, the screen lighting up the dark room. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then I read it. "Unknown number. You should have stayed quiet, Mom." My hands began to shake. I stared at the words until they blurred. My heart pounding so loudly I was sure the nurses could hear it. There was no name, no picture, but I didn't need one. Caleb was alive. And he was watching. I didn't respond. I couldn't. A second message followed almost immediately. Unknown number. Dad's paying for your mistake. Nani. Tears slid down my temples and into my hair. Henry sat in a holding cell because he'd tried to protect our family. Because he'd been weak once and brave till late. I closed my eyes and whispered, I'm done being afraid. The next morning, a detective named Alvarez came to my room. He was calm, measured, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Caleb contacted you, he said. I handed him the phone. His jaw tightened as he read the messages. This helps, he said. It shows intent. Continued threat. But you won't find him, I said. He planned this. Alvarez met my eyes. Then we make him come to us. That afternoon, I asked for a lawyer. Then I asked for a notary. The nurses looked confused. The staff whispered. But by evening, the paperwork was done. I gave a public statement. I told the world everything. The cover-up. The guilt. The mountain. The recording. I didn't protect myself. I told the truth, every ugly piece of it. The story exploded. Local news first. National. Mother breaks silence. After 25-year family secret, the headlines read. Caleb couldn't stand that. The third message came that night. Unknown number. You think this makes you strong? You just made yourself a target. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Because now he was reacting. I handed the phone to Detective Alvarez again. He'll come, I said. He needs control. 3 days later, Henry was released on bail. He looked smaller, older, but when he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know, I said. But we finished this together. That night, another message arrived. Unknown number. Meet me. Alone. Tomorrow. The old workshop. My breath caught. The workshopy. Where everything had started. Alvarez shook his head. It's a trap. I know, I said. But it's the only way. They were placed units nearby, hidden, watching. But Caleb wanted me alone. And I was ready. The workshop smelled like oil and dust in memory. Caleb stood in the shadows, thinner than I remembered, eyes burning. You always were dramatic, he said. I stepped forward. You killed your brother. He smiled. You let me. I swallowed hard. This ends tonight. Caleb tilted his head. No. He reached into his jacket. How? You choose. Because what Caleb pulled out of his coat wasn't a weapon, it was something far more devastating. What Caleb pulled from his coat wasn't a gun. It was a folder. Thick, worn, familiar. He dropped it onto the workbench between us. Papers spilled out, legal documents, bank statements, handwritten notes. The truth, he said calmly. The whole truth. My chest tightened. You forged the will. Caleb smiled. No, I rewrote it with permission. I shook my head. You lied to him. Caleb slid one page forward. Look closer. I recognized Henry's handwriting immediately. Shaky, but real. A signature dated months before the mountain trip. He signed it after Ethan's anniversary, Caleb said, when guilt finally ate him alive. My knees weakened. He gave me everything, Caleb continued. Caleb's eyes hardened. I used the truth. He stepped closer. And now, I'm offering you a choice. My heart pounded. What choice? Caleb's voice dropped. Recant your statement. Tell them you lied. That the fall was an accident. That the confession was confusion. I stared at him in disbelief. Do that, he continued, and I disappear. Henry walks free. I take the money and vanish. And Ethan? I asked. Caleb shrugged. Dead either way. Tears burned my eyes. You're asking me to betray my son. Caleb leaned in. I'm asking you to choose which one. The silence was suffocating. I thought of Ethan kind, honest, gone too soon. I thought of Henry broken, flawed, but trying to make it right. And I looked at Caleb standing before me, unrepentant. I already lost one son, I said. I won't lose my soul too. Caleb's smile faded. Then Henry stays in prison, he said coldly. And I walk. I straightened my shoulders. No. Caleb's jaw tightened. You think the police will protect you? They're listening, I said quietly. Caleb laughed. Where's? I checked. He was right. The room was silent. No sirens, no footsteps. Caleb exhaled slowly. Then this is goodbye. He turned toward the door. Caleb, I said. Paused. You forgot one thing. He glanced back. What? I lifted the folder and pulled out the final page. Ethan's journal. The one I'd hidden years ago. Caleb's eyes widened. You thought Henry was the only one with proof, I said. But Ethan wrote everything. Names, dates, fear. Caleb lunged for it. The door burst open. Police. Lights flooded the workshop. Caleb froze. Tulachi. But, as they handcuffed Caleb, the officer said something that made my heart stop. Ma'am. Your husband didn't tell us. Everything. The officer's words echoed in my head. Ma'am, your husband didn't tell us. Everything. My heart sank as they led Caleb past me in handcuffs. He didn't fight. Didn't speak. Just looked at me once empty, defeated, but still unrepentant. I turned to Detective Alvarez. What didn't he tell you? Alvarez hesitated. Henry didn't just cover up Ethan's death, he said carefully. He moved the body. The world seemed to tilt. They found evidence at the original site, he continued. Drag marks. Cleanup. He wanted to protect Caleb completely. I closed my eyes. I had spent years believing my husband's greatest sin was silence. But silence had been the mercy he allowed himself to remember. Henry was charged again this time with evidence tampering. At the trial, I sat in the front row alone. Caleb was convicted of murder. Life sentence. No paroli. He never looked at me again. When Henry took the stand, he didn't cry. He didn't make excuses. I failed both my sons, he said, and I failed my wife. If I could trade places with Ethan, I would. The judge sentenced him to prison. Shorter. Teo. When the courtroom emptied, I stayed behind. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Years passed quietly. I sold the house. Donated the business. I kept only one thing, Ethan's journal. Every birthday, I visited him. Every anniversary, I forgave myself a little more. One afternoon, a letter arrived from prison. Henry's handwriting. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I loved you the only way I knew how, weakly, till late. But truly, I folded the letter and placed it beside Ethan's journal. Some love comes broken. Some truths come late. But silence never protects it, only delays the pain. I volunteer now. I speak to mothers. I tell them to listen when something feels wrong. Because monsters don't always look like strangers. Sometimes they call you mom. If this story moved you, remember truth may hurt, but silence destroys. Subscribe my channel for more real and heart-touching stories every day.